Welcome to the Deep Dive. Today we're tackling something really fundamental. It's woven right into society, human reliance.
It really is. Well, forever, basically. Our ability to depend on each other, on tools, on knowledge, that's driven everything.
Totally. Cooperation, complex systems, it all hinges on reliance, doesn't it?
It does. But now there's AI, artificial intelligence, and it's changing the game.
Right. It throws this duality into sharp relief. The huge potential, but also the risks, relying too much.
Exactly. And you see that whole spectrum out there, don't you? People who think AI is the answer to everything and others who are deeply skeptical.
Which is precisely why we're doing this deep dive.
Yeah.
We want to explore what human reliance actually means now in the age of AI.
Yeah, our mission here is to kind of cut through the noise. We've pulled together a lot of info to give you a clearer path through this whole complex topic.
Absolutely. So expect some surprises. We'll start way back with the history of reliance.
Then dive into the psychology, what makes us trust AI or not trust it.
We'll even touch on some maybe unexpected philosophical takes on dependence.
And how AI itself sort of defines and measures reliance. It's quite specific.
And the impact, how it affects, well, everything. History, our own minds.
Critical ethical points, definitely. And we'll finish with practical stuff, strategies for, let's call it, healthy reliance.
Yeah, looking for those aha moments, those insights you can actually use as we all navigate this AI world.
So let's start with that big picture, the historical view. Our tendency to rely on things, it didn't just pop up with computers, did it?
Not at all. Think about our earliest ancestors. Survival meant relying entirely on their environment, right?
Yeah.
Food, water, shelter.
Completely dependent on nature. Then came that huge leap. Tools.
Yes. Suddenly we weren't just passive recipients. We started shaping things.
Exactly. A sharp stone, it's simple, but it means relying on your skill, the material.
Yeah.
But it gives you more control. It's extending yourself.
A very early form of leveraging something external.
Precisely. And then boom, the agricultural revolution. Talk about amplified reliance.
On crops, on animals. It changed society fundamentally. We became more settled, more interdependent.
And it's just been this steady climb ever since, hasn't it? Fire, printing, the Industrial Revolution.
Each step deepening our reliance on external systems, on accumulated knowledge.
It's like the giants we stand on the shoulders of, as the saying goes.
Yeah.
Increasingly, those giants are algorithms, which has huge implications.
That's a great way to put it. And this drive for efficiency, the sources mention miniaturization too.
Yeah, it's an interesting point. Think big machines shrinking down to tiny, powerful devices. Doing more with less often means relying on more complex tech, even if it's smaller.
So this history shows us, maybe, why we're kind of primed to embrace AI. It fits a long-standing pattern.
It really does. It sets the stage.
Okay, so reliance is deeply human. But what's going on, inside our heads when we decide to trust something like AI?
That's the million-dollar question, isn't it?
Yeah.
The sources frame reliance as a cognitive attitude. It guides our actions. It's not quite the same as just believing something is true.
Okay, an attitude that leads to action. And trust is key, you said.
Absolutely fundamental. Trust comes first. You need some level of trust before you'll depend on a system, or a person for that matter. It's about making yourself a bit vulnerable, expecting things to work out.
Makes sense, like that faulty GPS example. You stop trusting it, you stop relying on it.
Exactly. But here's where it gets tricky. Our brains have these shortcuts, cognitive biases, and they can mess with our judgment about AI.
The biases, like automation bias.
That's a big one. The tendency to just go with what the automated system says, even if other evidence, maybe even a human expert, says otherwise.
Wow, even when a human expert disagrees, people still trust the machine.
Studies show it happens surprisingly often, yeah. Even in critical situations like medicine, then you've got confirmation bias.
Right, where we favor information or AI output. That confirms what we already think.
Precisely. So if you already lean a certain way politically or economically, you might be more likely to trust an AI that reinforces that view, whether it's actually accurate or not. Creates an echo chamber.
That's potentially quite dangerous.
It can be. And our individual differences matter a lot, too. Your AI literacy, for instance.
Meaning how well you understand how AI actually works, its limits.
Exactly. Someone with higher literacy might be more critical, more balanced in their reliance than someone who just sees AI as a magic black box.
And your expertise in the task itself?
That, too. An experienced pilot might interact differently with autopilot AI compared to a novice. And interestingly, research suggests some people just have a higher baseline propensity to trust technology, like a trait.
Wow, really? Some people are just inherently more trusting of tech.
Seems that way. And of course, perceived risk plays a role. If the stakes are really high, you might hesitate to rely too heavily on the AI.
Makes intuitive sense. If it's just choosing a movie, low stakes. If it's a medical diagnosis, much higher.
Exactly. And the sources even hint that our face-to-face interactions, how we build trust with people, might shape how we end up trusting technology. It's all interconnected. Psychology, bias, knowledge, experience.
A really complex web. Okay, so that's the mind. Stepping back again, what about philosophy? How does it grapple with dependence?
Well, philosophy gives us some really interesting angles. We often praise autonomy, independence, right? Being self-governing.
The ideal of the rugged individual, maybe?
Kind of, but there's a strong philosophical counterargument that dependence is just normal. It's part of being human. We are fundamentally interconnected.
Like the no man is an island idea. We rely on others constantly for everything.
Pretty much. Kant talked about a kind of self-dependence through our rationality, but, psychologically, socially, the idea of being totally mind-independent is tough. Our thoughts are shaped by others, by our environment.
And Nietzsche, he always has a unique take.
He saw freedom and autonomy more as achievements, things you build, maybe through a kind of internal reliance on your own drives, your own coherent self.
So not a given, but something earned.
Right. And then there's this idea of intellectual humility, recognizing that what we know is built on others' work, that inherently values reliance and learning.
So philosophy doesn't just say dependence bad. It's more nuanced.
Much more. It suggests finding a balance, basically. Knowing how and when to rely on people or tools like AI without losing your own critical thinking.
That makes a lot of sense. A healthy balance. Which brings us nicely to how AI itself, or the field studying it, looks at reliance.
Great. It's the probability that a user follows the AI's recommendations.
Straightforward enough. But the key issue is over-reliance. How is that defined?
The sources give a few definitions, but they boil down to this. You're over-relying if you accept incorrect AI advice or if you follow it when you actually could have made a better decision yourself.
So it's using AI inappropriately, basically, when your own judgment should maybe take precedence but doesn't.
Exactly. It's a mismatch between the AI's actual performance or suitability and how much we defer to it.
And how do researchers measure this?
Various ways. They track how often users accept wrong recommendations. They look at the switch fraction, how often you change your mind to match the AI. And the weight of advice, how much the AI's suggestion influences your final decision.
Interesting metrics. And you mentioned reliance drills. What are those?
Yeah. Sounds intense, doesn't it? They're basically tests. Scenarios designed to see if people spot errors or inappropriate advice from the AI.
So deliberately flawed AI output to test critical evaluation.
Pretty much. Are you just clicking accept or are you actually thinking about it?
Clever. And AI can even model how our trust changes over time.
Yes, they try to model that human-AI interaction, including trust dynamics. They even use things like statistical decision theory.
Which is like a mathematical way
To model how we weigh the AI's advice against our own judgment. It helps pinpoint when we're giving the AI too much influence, mathematically separating our tendency to follow advice from our own accuracy.
Okay, really sophisticated ways to analyze this. So we see how reliance works in our minds, how AI measures it. And its impact is incredibly broad, isn't it? The sources touch on so many areas. Let's start with, say, time and history.
Absolutely. How we understand the past shapes everything, right? Our present, our future choices. But that understanding relies on records, narratives.
Which might be biased or incomplete.
Exactly. Over-relying on dominant narratives without questioning them can really limit our perspective and lead to, well, flawed understandings of how things really work or worked.
A powerful point. What about fields like genetics and biology? Seems more objective.
You'd think so, but even there, how we rely on genetic info matters. Over-reliance on genetic determinism, thinking genes are everything, makes us ignore environment, choice, potential for change.
So it's about seeing the whole picture, not just the genetic blueprint.
Precisely. The complex interplay.
Okay, moving to more abstract realms like philosophy and logic.
Well, you rely on principles, methods. But sticking too rigidly to one school of thought, one system, that can stifle new ideas. Progress often comes from questioning the foundations you rely on.
Like using an old map, you miss the new roads. Same for physics and math.
Similar idea. Models and laws are essential, obviously, but over-relying on current ones can sometimes blind us to new discoveries or better theories. Science advances by seeing the limits of current reliance.
And this isn't just external knowledge, right? It affects our internal state too.
Yeah.
Our minds.
Definitely. We all have coping mechanisms, ways of thinking, but over-relying on just one strategy, well, that can become unhealthy, even add to stress. Resilience often comes from having a flexible toolkit.
It connects to belief systems too, I imagine. Religious, political.
For sure. They offer community, meaning, which relies on shared acceptance. But unquestioning acceptance can sometimes lead to intolerance, closing off other views.
Finding that balance again between shared values and critical thinking.
Exactly. And bringing it right back to AI, the impact of over-reliance there on us as individuals and even in teams is becoming clearer.
Yeah, the sources mention cognitive skills potentially declining if we just offload thinking.
That's a major concern. And in teams, if people don't critically check AI outputs, performance can suffer. Suboptimal decisions get made.
But on the flip side, healthy reliance on AI can boost productivity, augment our skills.
Absolutely. It's not inherently bad, which is why the global reaction is so mixed, right?
Yep.
Optimism and excitement, but also real concerns about jobs, ethics, societal impact.
Underscores the need for careful, responsible development and use.
Definitely. Which leads us straight into the ethics of it all.
Yes. What are the big ethical red flags with AI reliance?
Well, several key ones. Bias baked into algorithms is huge. Lack of transparency, the black box problem, how AI impacts our autonomy. Job displacement is a constant worry.
Security risks, too, I imagine, and misinformation, especially with large language models.
Oh, definitely. If people over-rely on LLMs without checking facts, misinformation can spread like wildfire. There's also this ethical need for objectivity in professions like medicine or law, avoiding undue reliance on tech.
And accountability. What happens when an error occurs, partly because someone over-relied on the AI? Who's responsible?
That's a really thorny issue. It highlights the need for clear ethical frameworks to guide how we build and deploy these systems.
And we already mentioned automation bias, but the ethical risks there are amplified in high-stakes fields, aren't they?
Yeah.
Healthcare, finance, justice.
Absolutely critical. And there's a broader ethical responsibility, too, preventing the erosion of essential human skills because we've become too dependent.
Okay, so the ethical considerations are significant.
Yeah.
Given all this, the potential downsides, the ethics is, what can we actually do? What are the strategies for healthier reliance?
Good news is there are strategies, lots of them actually, mentioned in the sources. For individuals, good onboarding is key.
Meaning when you first start using an AI system.
Yeah. Showing examples of where it might make mistakes. Setting realistic expectations right from the start. Transparency is vital to clearly stating what the AI can and can't do well.
And personalized adjustments. How would that work?
It could mean tailoring the AI's intervention level. Maybe someone prone to automation bias gets less proactive suggestions or needs to confirm more often.
Making the interaction fit the user's tendencies. What about cognitive forcing functions?
Right, those are design tricks, basically. Nudges to make you stop and think, not just blindly accept, maybe requiring a quick justification for agreeing with the AI.
Anything to break that automatic acceptance. Real-time feedback sounds useful too.
Very. Feedback on the AI's past accuracy, maybe even comparing your performance with and without it, helps you calibrate your trust.
And explanations from the AI, not just the answer, but the why.
Yes, but carefully done. Explanations should inform, not just create false confidence. Giving users choice and control over the interaction is also important for agency.
And education, naturally. Improving AI literacy across the board.
Crucial. Understanding the basics, the potential pitfalls, also this idea of cognitive friction.
Making it slightly harder to rely on the AI.
Yeah, sometimes. Maybe a slight delay in the response, just enough to make you think a bit more yourself. It's about encouraging critical engagement.
It's fascinating that the sources even mention child development principles.
It is, isn't it? Fostering problem-solving, decision-making in kids. Maybe similar principles apply to helping adults develop healthy tech reliance.
Because ultimately it comes down to critical thinking.
That seems to be the cornerstone, yes. Evaluating information, weighing risks, making informed choices, whether the info comes from a person, a book, or an AI.
This has been incredibly insightful, really digging into something that's reshaping our world.
It's definitely a moving target.
So, just to wrap up, human reliance, it's core to who we are, always evolving, been key to our progress.
But AI adds this whole new dimension, bringing huge potential, but also real risks of over-reliance if we're not careful.
We've touched on the history, the psychology behind trust and bias, philosophical views, how AI measures reliance,
Its wide-ranging impact, the crucial ethical questions.
and importantly, practical strategies, things we can do, things system designers can do, to aim for that healthy balance.
That balance is key. Finding that sweet spot between leveraging AI and maintaining our own capabilities.
So here's something for you, the listener, to think about. In this world where AI is becoming more and more integrated, how do you consciously cultivate that balanced interdependence?
Yeah, how do you make sure you're using technology to enhance yourself without diminishing your own critical thinking, your own independence? What's your personal responsibility in navigating this relationship as it evolves?
Lots to think about there. Definitely questions worth keeping in mind as we move forward in this age of intelligent machines.
This is DigitView.